Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Yesterday, on the undercard of Denny versus Cash, we saw a battle of the unbeatens in the women's super flyweight division between then unbeaten Shannon Ryan and unbeaten Emma Dolan. And Emma managed to upset Shannon,
Which I don't necessarily agree with.
so one of the judges had it 95-94 in favor of Shannon,
Where another judge had it 96-93 for Emma Dolan, and another judge had it 96-94 for Emma Dolan.
96-94, a difference of 2 points. So that's saying that in the second round, where Emma Dolan scores a knockdown towards the tail end of the round,
Right.
if it's not scored a knockdown,
10-8 round.
Shannon Ryan was winning that round up until that point. It was a very good round for Shannon up until that knockdown. And Emma Dolan was able to score that knockdown off of what looked like rabbit punches, illegal punches, to the back of Shannon Ryan's head.
2 of them.
What initiated the sequence, it looked like Emma Dolan got in with a good right hook within close quarters, but then she starts teeing off, lets go of 2 punches, what looked to be 2 punches to the back of Shannon Ryan's head, and that's how Shannon lost her footing. That's how Shannon was knocked down.
It was clear as day, and I was surprised the referee didn't call it.
Because he didn't call it, and because it was scored a knockdown, an official knockdown, I feel like that's what costed Shannon the fight.
And it shouldn't have.
The fight was closer than I thought it would be, tighter than I thought it would be. To Emma Dolan's credit, Shannon Ryan did struggle to get within striking distance of her more than I thought she would. I thought she'd be able to slip in and out a lot easier.
She struggled with Emma Dolan's height, length, Emma Dolan's jab.
Around the middle, there were some rounds where it was very, very hard to separate them.
But it does seem like the knockdown in the second round is what decided the contest, and as stated, I don't think that should have been a knockdown. Those were illegal punches.
I heard some saying that perhaps Shannon Ryan is a bit too small for super flyweight, that maybe she needs to move down to flyweight. I don't agree with that. It's not that Shannon is too small for super flyweight so much as Emma is so big. She's unusually big for a super flyweight.
Long and limber.
And it is Emma Dolan's length that Shannon Ryan struggled with, though I don't want to overstate that, because there were rounds like round 9 and round 10 where Shannon is getting through with clean punches, impactful punches. Listen, I don't think Shannon lost the fight.
Sorry.
If what really determined the outcome was a knockdown that shouldn't have been scored a knockdown, that tells the story.
It's nothing against Emma.
So if it weren't scored a knockdown, and Shannon would have been awarded the second round, that judge's scorecard would have likely been 95-95.
One judge might have still had it for Emma, and one judge would have had it for Shannon. It would have been a draw. And a draw makes a lot more sense to me than what we got.
And so Emma Dolan collects yet another unbeaten fighter's scalp. She collected the scalp of unbeaten Nicola Hopewell in her last fight, and she just collected the scalp of unbeaten Shannon Ryan yesterday.
What happens now?
I feel like this was a sink or swim fight for Shannon Ryan. Shannon, who, at least up until this point, has been signed to Matchroom. What does it mean that she lost this thing? Is Matchroom going to cut her? Are they going to start doing business with Emma Dolan? Invest in her career?
What happens now?
I don't want to make it seem like I'm angry at Emma Dolan. She fought a good fight. She did fight a good fight, but I just don't think that should have been scored a knockdown.
And I think think that's what made all the difference on the judges' scorecards.
It's hard to say what happens now.
For Shannon.
No, it's not the end of the world that she suffered her first professional loss yesterday. I have no doubts that she can rebound. But promotion-wise, is Matchroom going to keep her on? That's my question.
We'll see.
Still have a lot of faith in that fighter. I still have a lot of faith in Shannon Ryan. I haven't sold all my stock.
Chino, it is what it is, I guess.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Eddie Hearn chimed in on Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia's fiscal expectations for what was their pay-per-view. Eddie Hearn stated, sometimes fighters, Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, have grand delusions of what a fight has generated and how much money they are going to get paid. Unfortunately, the commercial reality of Haney versus Garcia is nowhere near the deluded expectations of some people. The only number I saw put out there, the only ballpark figure, was in the neighborhood of 500,000.
Oh.
500,000 pay-per-view buys, which really isn't bad.
Most pay-per-views these days don't bring in 500,000 pay-per-view buys. Most don't.
So if that figure checks out, and this one did, that is a respectable number, though hardly astronomical.
It's good.
A little over a week ago, we saw that both Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney were still expecting payment for what was, or what's supposed to be, the upside of the pay-per-view. And the upside of the pay-per-view is everything that comes in after the pay-per-view breaks even. The fighters get their guarantees up front.
Guarantees usually aren't that big unless you're Canelo Alvarez or maybe Anthony Joshua.
And those two guys are proven draws in their respective markets, proven draws with proven selling power over time. Thus, you can guarantee them a large sum of money because you know that they're good for it in all the ways many other fighters are not. But Ryan and Devin, they didn't get big guarantees. They didn't get astronomical guarantees. And it doesn't help Ryan that he just had to forfeit his as a result of the settlement agreement he reached with the New York State Athletic Commission.
That was part of it. He had to give his guarantee back to Golden Boy.
A lot of the fighters these days turn to pay-per-view for the money that the broadcaster or the platform won't give them. That the platform's not just going to give them $20, $30, $40 million up front.
No way, that's too risky.
So the best way to get at it is pay-per-view. That's your best bet.
But it's not a sure bet.
It's not a guarantee. And with so many fighters, so many Floyd Mayweather clones, I should say, thinking that they're all God's gift to boxing individually, and they're gonna do what Floyd did and rob the bank like Floyd did, make the money that Floyd made.
You're not.
Because one thing that always gets left out when you tell the story of Floyd Mayweather is he wasn't selling those pay-per-views by himself. A lot of his dance partners were high-profile dance partners like Juan Manuel Marquez and Miguel Cotto,
Manny Pacquiao, Oscar De La Hoya,
Shane Mosley, the list goes on. That every single one of those aforementioned fighters had a bigger following when they fought Floyd than Devin has going into the Garcia fight.
That matters.
All people seem to remember is that Floyd Mayweather beat those fighters, and he did beat those fighters, but he didn't sell the pay-per-views on his own. He didn't sell it by himself. Those fighters had fans too, which is why so many of those pay-per-views brought in robust numbers, whereas Devin's following isn't actually all that big.
What are you picking on Devin for?
Not picking on him, it's just an inconvenient truth that Devin's next fight, what was supposed to be his fight with Sandor Martin, that went to purse bid, and promoters were not climbing over each other to win the rights to that fight.
What's that have to do with anything?
That if you're a moneymaker and the promoters feel that you're a moneymaker, they're going to spend that money to get the rights to your fight. But they didn't. The only ones who put a bid in were Top Rank, and it wasn't even a big bid.
And they only did it because of Sandor, because they promote Sandor.
So when your fight goes to purse bid, and the promoters aren't throwing vast sums of cash at you in your fight, it's because commercially, they don't think you're worth it.
The numbers don't tell the story to where they're supposed to spend an arm and a leg just to get you to fight on their platform. That's the gist of it. And that speaks to what Eddie Hearn is talking about. That Devin and Ryan might have thought they were going to break records with their fight.
They did all right.
But your delusions of grandeur and what you're supposed to be paid for a boxing match don't align with reality.
Too many of these guys want to fight on pay-per-view. Too many of these guys.
Too many fights end up there.
And with the paying public, there are actually only so many times in a single calendar year they're going to reach into their wallets to pay per view.
That's reality.
But I gotta educate y'all on this. I tried to fight Isaac Cruz, and I spoke to his manager. They just said, whoa. Not yet. We just got the belt, champ. We gotta go and focus on trying to get a Gervonta Davis rematch. So y'all gonna see that very soon, by the way. Yeah, I'm saying it like it is. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Do I believe that Teofimo Lopez was ducked by Isaac Cruz?
Yes.
Do I believe that Teofimo tried to initiate talks for a fight with Isaac and the Isaac Cruz people went in another direction?
Yes.
I absolutely do. I absolutely believe it because that's what we've been seeing from Isaac Cruz for the last 2 years. The 2 years that followed his competitive fight with Gervonta Davis, he was offered a Ryan Garcia fight by Oscar De La Hoya. His people turned it down.
He was ordered to fight Shakur Stevenson by the World Boxing Council.
So when Teofimo says that they reached out to them and tried to make a fight with them, but they were more focused on a Gervonta Davis rematch, I can believe that.
Because that's what we've been seeing. Not because Teofimo said it.
Not just because Teofimo said it, but because there's a historical precedent that is what we've been seeing from Isaac.
He says him and Tank are fighting again.
For all the fights that Isaac Cruz has walked away from in the last 2 years with more high-profile opponents than the guys he's been fighting.
What did he actually do that's such a big deal? Beat Rolly?
He beat Rolly? That's it. He beat Rolly.
Wow.
Yeah, congratulations. You're WBA champion. But who did you win the WBA title from? You won it from one of the worst, and I mean one of the worst boxers in postmodern boxing today. You won it from Rolly.
And you only made it that far by avoiding people, by avoiding Ryan Garcia, by avoiding Shakur Stevenson.
So when Teofimo says that he was rejected by Team Cruz because they're pursuing a Gervonta Davis rematch, I believe it.
Well, I thought Gervonta was supposed to be fighting Vasyl Lomachenko.
Well, that's what some people said, but I never completely bought into it. I don't believe it.
Given Gervonta's piss-poor pay-per-view numbers for the Frank Martin fight, he needs somebody with a bit more profile, a bit more buzz.
Isaac has more of a following than Frank Martin did, so I could totally see Gervonta fighting him again.
That's bugged.
Hell yeah, because they doing it right now with Gervonta Davis or Wahid or whatever the fuck you want to call him. They got him on a swivel. They got him. They working on him, putting the Muslim on him and all that. So, you know, they got their whole.
You talking about
strings.
Gervonta?
Yeah. With Gervonta, they got him on that. He ain't gonna fight me. Niggas too pussy.
It is a little jarring that Gervonta Davis versus Teofimo Lopez isn't more of a conversation, two young guys.
Counterpunches.
Very strong. That Davis versus Lopez never really had much traction, in spite of the open shots that Teofimo openly takes at Gervonta Davis.
He's been doing that for years. He's been doing that ever since he beat Vasyl Lomachenko.
Well, yeah, but he did lose to George Kambosos right after that.
Big deal. Isaac Cruz lost to Luis Alvarez in 2016. He had a loss already going into the Gervonta Davis fight. That didn't stop Gervonta from fighting him.
So why Gervonta ain't got no time and no energy for a Teofimo Lopez who's been beaten before? And I think Davis versus Lopez would do much better business, would have done much better business than the Frank Martin fight did.
Don't you think?
There are rumors and rumblings that maybe Gervonta fights Vasyl Lomachenko, and I'm just thinking, well, for fighting Vasyl Lomachenko, why don't you fight the man that beat him?
Because he's not in his mid-30s.
Because he campaigns at a higher weight. Because maybe fighting Lopez, maybe, is a bit riskier than fighting Loma at this stage.
Gervonta's a coward.
So I have to agree with Teofimo there.
Gervonta's a coward.
His fans actually get offended when you make these kinds of recommendations that he should fight Shakur Stevenson or he should fight Teofimo Lopez.
You don't want to see them fight?
That you're more happy seeing him fight the likes of Hector Luis Garcia or Frank Martin than Teofimo Lopez. You don't want to see him fight Teofimo Lopez.
They like the idea of Gervonta Davis more than the fighter.
When you look at the paltry numbers that Gervonta Davis's last pay-per-view put up, in the neighborhood of 200,000, if it even did that, what that tells me is you don't like him so much that you're spending your hard-earned dollars to see him. No, you're likely watching him through illegal streams.
You don't like him that much.
Not enough to spend your money, but you like the idea of him because you identify with him, that he's a piece of trash that comes from trash, and so do you.
Trash on trash.
So it's the idea of him they like more than anything, more than they like the fighter or the fighting, which is why they have no energy for a Davis versus Stevenson fight or a Davis versus Lopez fight. They don't actually want him to have to prove it and prove himself.
They're scared he might not be able to.
That you don't watch the Harlem Globetrotters play the Generals because you're actually expecting the Generals to win.
And you don't watch a Gervonta Davis fight because you're expecting Frank Martin to win or Hector Luis Garcia or Ryan Garcia.
Not after they weight drain him and weaken him.
I don't often agree with things that Teofimo says, but in the case of Gervonta Davis, I have to agree. He's a chump.
He's a punk.
A coward.
The poster child for cowards who are looking for an icon.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Tank and Stevenson or Tank and Lopez never fight.
There was a low dosage of Austrian or not. Devin Haney got your ass whipped. Take the L and just move forward. If not, if you feel like you got cheated, fight him again. Do a rematch.
So Teofimo doesn't have a lot of sympathy for Devin. I don't really expect him to, but that does make him a bit of a hypocrite because where you're saying that Devin's making excuses for his performance with Ryan, weren't you making excuses for your performance with George Kambosos? The only reason that fight took so long to make was because of you. And everything that happened, just all the wheels that got set in motion were set in motion by you. Because if you would have did it when Top Rank wanted to do it, at the price that Top Rank wanted to do it,
it wouldn't have took so long, so maybe making the weight wouldn't have been as difficult. You wouldn't have went into the fight sick with some kind of ailment, some kind of sickness.
That it all would have got done quickly, and you know that I think Teofimo would have actually beat him?
I think he would have beat him.
The stars just aligned for George Kambosos, and credit to him because he made the most of it.
He got lucky?
Well, I mean, I tend to look at luck as preparation meeting opportunity. That's all it is. George was prepared. Teofimo wasn't.
So if he's going to sit in an armchair and preach to Devin Haney about how he should handle that situation, he really needs to look in the mirror. How did you handle the loss to George Kambosos?
That you think you're in any position to talk.
It's hypocritical.
That Ryan Garcia had Osterin found in his system, and Teofimo isn't making more of it. More of that.
I like to study the fighters' reactions when these things happen, these doping fiascos.
He just kind of glosses over it. He's blasé about the whole thing. And you would think that a fighter, more so than a fan, more so than most, might be concerned with something like that. But what I'm seeing from Teofimo is that he isn't. That's interesting.
That he didn't spend more time on that.
I find that interesting. Doping in the sport of boxing affects the fighter directly, affects the fighter more than it affects anyone else. But behind the curtain, is doping so widespread in the sport that the fighters actually know about it and they're okay with it? Because it's a common practice. Just trying to reconcile Teofimo's demeanor towards the whole thing.
And why a professional boxer would be so blasé about something like that.
That they wouldn't be disturbed or they wouldn't be outraged. They just kind of gloss over it. Maybe it's because to them, it's common practice. It's not something you complain about.
They're not going to say that.
You know, I don't know.